think so. Get a wee thumbs up if we're good to go. Look at my rosy red cheeks, Charlie. Well, that's sunshine today.
Oh, that weather.
Who have we got? We've got 16 people. We've got some thumbs up, so I think live chat. I think we're good to go. I'm just looking for a wee thumbs up. Bandit, a wee thumbs up. Is the sound okay? Plenty of battery. Right, there's Jim Smith. Bandit, thank you.
Jim.
Right, we're good to go. I'll turn off the comments just for just now. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming on. So, tonight's live is a little bit off the normal topic, and it came about because Charlie is a fellow YouTuber. Charlie's got his channel out and about, Robert Fleeton. Charlie does walking in the Highlands a bit like myself. Charlie's a former serviceman and now retired. And Charlie told me something about his personal life, which was that very tragically Charlie lost his son to a verdict of suicide on a British military camp. His son was serving in the RAF, and 10 years have passed, and basically Charlie, after a long conversation, said to me that he's hit a brick wall. He has had no closure, and the verdict is one that is extremely dubious at best. Charlie believes there was foul play. He believes that everything that is available to him, which isn't much, points to that, and also that fundamentally the handling of the whole process was wrong. I know the ins and outs. You're now going to hear the ins and outs. Tonight is an appeal, guys. We are appealing for anybody who may be criminally or civil law, who may know about these types of things, wrongful deaths. We're looking for an appeal. We're looking for people to share this, and if anybody can throw us a bone with somebody and point us in the right direction. Charlie's not had any luck with anybody else. This is what we're going to try tonight. That's all this is about, guys. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Robert Fleeton to my humble abode, and Charlie's going to tell his story. So everybody wish him well, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Charlie, how you doing, mate?
I'm alright, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Brilliant. He's just trying my coffee. It's maybe not the best, but here you go. Hey.
It's drinkable. It's drinkable.
It's drinkable. So guys, as I said, Charlie's got his YouTube channel, and Charlie follows me, and I'd started to follow Charlie. We get talking, we'd met up, and we'd a good crack. And then I'd originally met Charlie many years ago at one of my fisheries, and I taught him to fly fish a long time ago, and he had commented and jogged my memory. So that was how we met. Long before we met here, we met there. So Charlie, let's do a wee introduction. So Charlie's son, Robert, was 24 at the time of his death. He'd been in the RAF a couple of years.
Yeah.
And he was a fireman, which was a job he'd always wanted to do. It was a job he loved. He was absolutely loving life. He was in a good place. And Charlie, let's hear how you received the call and what kind of time that was for you.
I just got wee Buddy. Everybody knows me as my wee dog Buddy. And I was down in Lynn Park in Glasgow with the dog. And the police phoned me. And I thought it was a crank call at first, because they said that I had to go up to the house. They wanted to talk to me. And I thought it was a parking ticket that I had years ago. And that I refused to pay. So when the guy called me mate, you need to come up to the house, mate.
Yeah.
That's when I thought, oh, this is a crank. So I said, well, just leave me your badge number and I'll contact the police station when I get home. And he says, no, you need to come home, it's regarding your son Robert.
Yep.
And
Keep
as
talking.
soon as he said that, I knew there was something.
Yep.
Because why would they mention Robert? And with the police being there, I says, don't tell me my son's passed away. And he says to me, you're on the right lines, but you need to come home. So that was it. I headed home. Well, I had to go and get Susan. She was working. She was a manageress in Iceland. I had to go and get her. And she wouldn't believe me. She kept phoning Robert, phoning his phone, hang up, phone his phone. I said, you need to come home. The police are waiting. I said, if you don't stop what you're doing, stop phoning them, I'm just going to leave you here. So eventually I got her in the car. We got home, and there was 2 police officers, 2 young boys, and I could see the welling up. One of them was welling up, and I knew then. And I put the dog in the cage, and he says to me, you Mr. Fleeton, you Robert's next of kin? And I says, aye. He says, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but your son has passed away. There's a phone number to phone. And I says, well, what's happened to him? Well, we don't know. Where did it happen? We don't know. Phone that phone number. So I says, right, okay. So I phoned the phone number, and it was actually Corporal Wilcox, an RAF police officer who was the first on the scene at RAF Benson. It was his number that they gave me. So when he answered the phone, I asked him about Robert, and he says, the Strathclyde police no told you? I said, they can't tell me nothing. That's why they've given me this phone number. What's happened? He says, I don't know how to tell you this, but your son committed suicide today in his room. And I says, well, what time did this happen? I wasn't as brassy about it. What time did this happen? I was sort of a shock. And he says to me, 8:30 this morning. And I looked at the clock, and it was 10 to 4 in the afternoon. And I says, well, how come it's took you to 10 to 4 to tell me this? Why has nobody been to my door? Where's the Royal Air Force? And he said, somebody will be at your door within 2 hours. I says, right. He couldn't tell me nothing. He just told me that Robert had committed suicide. And that was it. So they'd made up their mind right away, this is a suicide. So the RAF were coming out to see me within 2 hours. 6 o'clock came, 8 o'clock came, 10 o'clock, midnight came, nothing. 2 in the morning, nothing. Me and Susan waiting, nothing. So the next day at 8 o'clock, I phoned the guard room at RAF Benson. And the guard commander, he apologised and says that he'll go into the duty officer, who will then go into the RAF up in Lossiemouth. He'll send somebody down. They'll be there within 2 hours. I says, right, okay. Now this is 8 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the padre and an officer came out, Miles Ratherby, his name was. They came out. They couldn't really tell me nothing. They were there. The padre was mere to console us through religion or whatever he wanted to do, and the duty officer, he was there to organise the funeral. That's all he was there to do. Any questions I had to put them through him. He would take it to the hierarchy, and then he would get an answer. So they were a bit cagey with me, because when I asked for the duty officer's statement, they told me that Corporal Wilcox was the duty officer. And I said, but he can't be the duty officer, he's only a corporal. Where's the duty officer's statement? Obviously he's reported to the base commander the next day with his report on Robert's death. So where is this report? Oh, we don't know, we'll find out. Then they came back and told me that it was Corporal Wilcox who was the duty officer. So then I had a sort of an argument with them, and I thought, I shouldn't be arguing with the Royal Air Force. They should be helping us. I shouldn't be arguing saying that a corporal can't be a duty officer. A duty officer's got to be a warrant officer and above. So that had them near the barrel right away.
For anybody that, sorry to interrupt you, Charlie, for anybody that is wouldn't be aware of how military stuff done. It's very different to civilian life. When there's a death in the military, every single thing in the military is chain of command. And as Charlie says, a corporal can't be acting as a duty officer. He's non-commissioned for a start, so that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I've never heard anything like that, and I know about a lot of military deaths. And I also know that, and as percentages go, a lot of them are handled appallingly. And this is just going to, as Charlie continues now, this is going to go bad to worse. So go for it, Charlie. Let's hear how it was handled.
So I decided to ask a simple question to the Royal Air Force, one that I knew the answer to see what kind of response I would get from them. So I asked my family officer to ask a hierarchy, what time did I make the phone call to the guard room on the day that they informed me of Robert's death? Now I knew it was 10 to 4, because I remember I looked at the clock. So the answer, instead of the duty officer being the duty officer and phoning the guard room and asking the guard room to check the log and say what time did Mr. Fleeton phone, he would have got the answer and brought it back to me. There's who you spoke to, there's the time you called. He came back with the answer for the hierarchy, stating if I wanted to know what time I made the call to go to my service provider and ask them what time I made the call, I knew then there was something very wrong with my son's death. Because the Royal Air Force, who are meant to be the Grill Cream boys, the boys in blue, they would do anything for you, the stiff upper lip. I thought, why are they being so cagey and simple questions? And I knew then that I'd walked into a minefield regarding Robert's death. We never knew. Sorry, I'm jumping away ahead of myself.
It's all right,
here.
Charlie. Take your time, mate.
When Robert died, he trauma to his anal passage. He had marks on his wrist. He had a broken bone in his neck, and we never knew about these injuries until after we cremated Robert. Once Robert was cremated, the police then told us all about these injuries. Now, if they'd have told us about these injuries before he's cremated, Robert wouldn't have got cremated.
You would have asked for a second.
I would have asked for a second opinion, another autopsy to find out what you're talking about.
And what was the time scale, Charlie, from his death to his cremation?
Oh, it was only 11 days. It was very, very fast.
11 days, guys. Now, we've got an audience on just now, right? Over 70 people listening to this. I don't need to even say put your hand up who thinks that's bizarre. It's absolutely outrageous that those injuries weren't addressed properly. Everything points straight away to something seriously wrong here. And Charlie's absolutely right. And the minute Charlie started telling me his story, alarm bells rang.
Yeah.
With Charlie's permission, I've run this by somebody who is very high up in the medical world, and they were appalled by the handling of it. They literally said that wouldn't happen. Now, Charlie is nobody's fool. Charlie deserves closure in this. So I say it again, right now, this is an appeal, guys. So if you're thinking already that you can help Charlie or direct him somewhere, please get in touch.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, we went down to meet Thames Valley Police. Now, we never knew about the night's events or about the trauma to Robert. We were told that Robert had a gay fling with another RAF person, and he couldn't live with himself and committed suicide. So that's what we were led to believe, even though and we says, well, we thought it was another fireman. We thought, well, Robert's mistaken the bond, and he's got himself into a situation that he's felt that the only way he can get out of this is to take his own life. So we believed that that was the case, and the RAF never put us right in any details, nothing. We were saying to them, we don't want this other fireman at the funeral, because we don't want to be looking at every fireman and saying, is it him? Is it him? Is it him? So rather than get through all that, we says we don't want this other fireman at the funeral. And they says, well, the other fireman won't be at the funeral. So that was a wee bit, it took a wee bit of ease off us, because then we weren't sort of pointing fingers at anybody. But unknowns to us, it wasn't a fireman, it was a medic. Robert had met a medic on his night out. He went out with 4 firemen, and they ended up in a pub, and they were talking to nurses in the pub at Henley. And there was a gay medic with the nurses. Now seemingly there was an argument at the taxi rank between the gay medic and Robert. They were arguing at the taxi rank, and the gay medic called Robert a dickhead. So one word led to another. It calmed down. They go into their taxis, separate taxis, but the taxis go to the base at the same time. And at the base, the argument continued. And a corporal said that he stayed behind because the voices were getting louder and louder to make sure that everything was okay. Then he said everything was okay. They departed company, and that was it. But the next day, they found Robert hanging for his door in his room with trauma to his anal passage. As I said, these injuries that he had, we didn't know this. So when we got talking to Thames Valley Police, Dan Cartwright, imagine Alec is me sitting talking to the police officer. There was myself, there was Susan, there was myself, Susan, Stacey Ann, and Jeff Webb, the coroner's officer, and Dan Cartwright, the police officer who was in charge of the investigation. And he was sitting with his feet up like that, twiddling a pen.
For anybody that can't see, right, Charlie's basically got his leg up.
Aye, up here.
And this is the way that this guy who's handling
my son's death,
he's sitting there
twiddling a pen
in his fingers with his leg up, blasé, relaxed, back in a chair.
Aye.
Wrong.
And I says to him, he was saying things to me, and I was answering them. And I said to him, are you not going to write this down? Things that we were answering, because we were suited and booted. I had a suit, shirt and tie on, Susan was dressed, Sam was, and every one of us had a notebook. Even the coroner's officer said, you've all got notebooks. He says, because we don't want to miss anything. We don't want to miss anything, so we were taking notes.
Yep.
And when I asked the police officer why he wasn't taking notes and why he wasn't any questions or queries that I had writing them down, he says to me, because it's all in there. And he pointed to his head. It's all in there. I now know in there was empty.
Yep.
But he was saying it's all in there. And the one thing that really stuck out when we first met him with the coroner's officer, Jeff Webb. Jeff Webb turned to the police officer, Dan Carey, and says to him, well, as you can see, Darren, not everybody from Glasgow's Rabsy Nesbitt. And I looked at Susan, and she looked at me, and we looked and thought, where did that come from? Why did he even mention that? Why? So we were stereotyped before we even got there. Not everybody from Glasgow's Rabsy Nesbitt. That was for the coroner's officer.
Unbelievable.
To the policeman. And the policeman just looked and laughed. And I thought, there you go. We've been stereotyped before we even got there.
And wait, sorry Charlie, when Charlie's saying stereotyped, I can verify this. Charlie's service, his military service to my military service, were some decades apart. Similar things we done, we both served here, we both served there, similar things, but decades apart. But in those decades, nothing's changed. They still handle these things not very well. And there's a real lack of empathy, I believe, in the deaths that I've seen. We had a young guy, 22, I won't name him, took his life in Northern Ireland. Extremely randomly the way he done it, but he did take his life, and it was so shocking the way I saw it handled 20 years ago. There was no empathy at all. He was literally called an idiot for doing it, you know, just ridiculous. But when Charlie's talking about this, it's bringing up a lot of memories for me as well, with certain things, and nothing seems to have got any better. And just to quickly add, guys, if for those that don't know, you only have to Google deep cut, the deep cut deaths, which was an army training barracks like Pirbright or Catterick Garrison. Some amount of deaths over a very short period, and the corporals down there were horrific. I've seen army treatments very difficult, very different to the way recruits are treated in the Royal Marines. Very, very different type of discipline. Army, we spoke about this in depth, Charlie. Real power trip guys, real power trip guys, and torturous on these young 16 and 17-year-old recruits. I saw it with my own eyes at a barracks in Leconfield, which we spoke about. It was absolutely appalling. And I was a young Marine at the time, and I actually had to intervene. It was that bad what I was seeing, and it was a young female. So, have lessons been learnt? So far, probably, in my opinion, not.
No, I totally agree, because lessons weren't learnt even with Robert's death. Robert died in September 2011, and in December 2012, a young boy from RAF Benson was took to hospital because they inserted a foreign object into his anal passage.
For anybody that doesn't know, Charlie will explain about initiation processes. Let the viewers know, Charlie, what goes on with these.
Well, some initiations can be, they can go to extreme. They can do things to you that obviously you're not going to agree to these things. So they'll sneak up on you and get you, tie you down or whatever. Some of the other stuff is running the block, carrying your weapon. That's if you've messed up somewhere. Pokey drill, running the block. That could be classed as a beasting as well. But when the corporals and the sergeants and when they're all away home, and the barracks is left alone, that's when it all comes out. You always get one person who picks on the other person, and then he gets people to come with him. Let's get that guy because he fucked up a day and it made us look bad, and the corporal's going to kick your ass and more because of that. So then they would get you, tie you down, and ram something into your anal passage. Or if they classed you as being smelly, they would throw you in the showers and get the big brass broom and soak you, brass broom you. Do you know what I mean? So there's extremes that happen in initiations.
Yes. And there's always guys on a camp that take things to the extremes.
Aye.
We had, when I had an induction, it was swimming goggles with chilies on the inside of them that you had to wear, while biting the rim. Who could bite the rim off a pint glass the quickest? Your mouth was in shreds, while somebody's whipping your back with an alkathene pipe. Quite brutal. You take it in the chin to a point, and then I was strong-willed. I was like, right, that's me done, you know, enjoy the rest of your night. But there's always a guy that's drunk that wants to take it further. There's a bully always comes into his own when a young soldier is being initiated into a new unit, and some guy, it's his only opportunity to have his way with you, because that's what bullies are. They're fundamentally weak people, and this is their moment. So extreme things happen in initiations, and some of them are absolutely horrific. In fact,
I think that's what happened to Robert. He was put through an initiation, and it went to the extreme, and it took his life. Yeah. But as I was saying about the initiations and the lessons learnt, on that December when that young boy was took to the hospital because they inserted a foreign object into his anal passage, the SIB for Bryce Norton were called in to investigate this, and the sergeant for the SIB investigated it, and his outcome of that because it was us that reported it, because we were told the boy's name, when it happened, where it happened, who was involved, and we sent that to Thames Valley Police and says to them, initiations are still taking place on that camp. So they gave it then to the SIB for Bryce Norton, and his findings were nobody was going to get charged, nobody was going to get dealt any kind of punishment, because it was a prank that went wrong. That was his findings. A prank that went wrong. Now I would love that sergeant for the SIB. I'd love it if his son came in for his work and says, oh, the boys in the work today got a hold of me and rammed something up, but it was a prank. It was that's me, one of the boys now. What do you think his dad would have done?
The SIB, guys, is the Special Investigations Branch of the military police, like the RMPs, the Royal Military Police. The SIB do the deeper. If a load of guys go ashore, right, and get pissed out their heads and there's a fight and a civilian gets injured in a fight, these are the guys that will hound you and drag you over the coals until they get to the bottom of it. Even if it was the other way about. A lot of these guys join this again for power, to exert power, because they just like putting people in the dock, so to speak.
Yeah.
I've got a double-edged kind of opinion of the SIB within the military. I sometimes think personal agenda can get in the way of it, where I believe there should be military discipline, but also for things that happen while in civilian run ashores, I genuinely believe they should be dealt with by civilian police. I've always thought that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Charlie, tell the audience about how the evidence has been handled and the fact that you are not allowed to view it. This is absolutely insane, right?
Yeah.
Let's hear this, Charlie.
Thames Valley Police, they're so backwards, it's unbelievable. If there's any police officers out there that know the importance of a Gen 19 within a case, please let me know, because I've had the Gen 19 went missing, and when it went missing, I asked a police officer who was dealing with it, what's the importance of that in any case, and she refused to answer me. She wouldn't answer.
Let's hear what the Gen 19 is.
What is a Gen 19?
Yep.
I don't know what a Gen 19 is. So if there's any police officers out there that can tell me what a Gen 19 is and what its purpose is.
Yeah.
The scene log went missing. Robert's underwear and his socks went missing. The key to his room went missing. Corporal Wilcox's notebook went missing. There's loads of other things that tallied up to show the incompetence, and it starts off with Robert never being formally identified. Now that's down to the coroner and the coroner's officer. Why did they release a body that hadn't been formally identified? And Thames Valley Police, why did they start an investigation? His death when he hadn't been formally identified.
Robert was identified by a military person who had never met him.
No, he'd never met him.
Never met him before.
The only time he met Robert was when he found him hanging for the back of the door.
That was the first time this person had seen him. That doesn't add up at all.
No.
That's ridiculous.
That's who formally identified Robert. They didn't even know him.
So far, guys, you know, we're 20 minutes into this chat and it's all negatives.
Yeah.
There's nothing positive yet, and it only gets worse.
Aye. The evidence that they destroyed Robert's blood as well, even though a second investigation was taking place into Robert's death, they still destroyed his blood, because we thought maybe he'd been drugged, and that was their chance to get his blood and check it, but they destroyed it.
So not only did they destroy the blood samples, they lost all the evidence. They lost items of clothing, the initial crime scene report, which is a highly, you know, important piece of evidence in any death was lost. And also, Thames Police are holding this information, but on the notes from the military to the police has had recorded on it that the Fleeting family, under no circumstances, are to view the evidence.
So why if the RAF have done such a great
It's
job?
his son, and if the coroner's recorded no foul play, and it's just a straightforward suicide, then why can't he view the evidence? And why can't he know the sequence of events that his son went through? That doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah.
You don't need to be trained in law to know that that's stinking. That absolutely stinks to high heaven.
Aye. Yeah. And
Unbelievable, Charlie.
anybody that's in the military, this next bit that I'm going to tell you, I've never ever came across it. And if you've came across it, let me know. They held a service inquiry only because I pushed for a service inquiry. They weren't going to hold one into Robert's death. And I stated that if I lose a watch, if I lost a watch, there'd have been a service inquiry of why I lost a G10 watch. If I lost a machete, there'd be a service inquiry. So them losing serving personnel, a service inquiry is needed. So I pushed them, and eventually they did. They held a service inquiry. But it took them 9 months. Within that time, the coroner's inquest had been done and dusted. So the service inquiry findings weren't there to help the coroner come to an outcome, because it took too long. They've took too long. Instead of them doing it right away when everybody's in the same camp, the same area, they then posted them all out to Cyprus, to Germany, to Scotland, England, so that the service inquiry had to sort of get them in. And then the flight officer who was in charge of the service inquiry, Andrew Mackenzie, came out to my house and apologised to me, stating that the Royal Air Force wouldn't let him take it any further than terms of reference.
While Charlie's getting a drink, also Robert left 5 suicide notes. Charlie's told me this, and I can speak about it. He's left 5 suicide notes, but the police missed one of them in their initial search, and there's a little bit of strangeness around that as well.
Yeah.
Charlie never recognised his own son's writing. It was different. There was words used that were almost as if not to offend anybody, but the way that someone from the south of England might interpret a Scottish word and write it in paper. Brought, for instance, you brought something here. Explain this, Charlie, today. This is interesting.
In the suicide note, the word brung, B-R-U-N-G, was written. And the coroner's officer phoned me and asked me what did brung mean. And I said, I don't understand you, you'll need to give me a sentence. And he says, I've brung shame. And I said, no, that's not a word that we write. If you're going to write that word, you write brought. That's a dialect word that we use as we're talking. I brung it, there it's there. But if I was writing it down, I would write down, I brought it. So I says to him, that's a red herring.
Yeah.
Wherever you've seen that, that's a red herring. That's somebody that wants you to believe a joke wrote that. So talking about the suicide notes, we couldn't understand why Thames Valley Police got Robert's girlfriend to sign off the suicide notes as being Robert's handwriting when she never got a letter off Robert or a postcard. They were all texts. So why did the police find it necessary to get her to sign off the suicide notes saying that's Robert's handwriting?
Yeah, I'm just reading the comments here.
When I still believe it wasn't Robert's handwriting. There's 5 suicide notes. 4 were found on the day. and one was found 5 weeks, 4 days later, when the Royal Air Force were going through Robert's MFO box to send it back to us. So that was the box that they packed all his stuff into. They've sent it down to High Wycombe. They've took it all back out and rechecked it. And whilst they were rechecking it, they found a suicide note. And it was handed into the police. Now in the suicide note, Robert never mentioned his wee sister in any of the 5 notes. He got his girlfriend's nickname mixed up. He was supposed to have wrote the word Brung. He never mentioned anything to do with life whatsoever, just death.
And Charlie said that was extremely strange,
That was
because
very-
he was so close to his sister.
Very, very
And she never
close.
got a mention in 5 full letters.
Yeah.
The fact that Charlie asked, I said, Charlie, see the suicide notes, did you recognise his writing? And straight away he went, no, I never.
No.
And I don't know what made me ask it, but I was like, because everything else didn't sound right, I then asked that question, and straight away he gave me the answer I thought he was going to give me. Claire Hottinger, thanks Claire, has commented, Charlie, a Gen 19 is a notification of death form that goes to the coroner. That's what a Gen 19 is.
So why would that go missing?
So it went missing, no record of it, along with the evidence as well. There's a few other interesting comments. I need to go back a wee bit. Someone has had their son, I believe, or brother committed suicide in the Queen Elizabeth last year. I'm trying to find the comment. I might need to troll back. Thanks everyone that's on, by the way, and comment. There's loads and loads of comments. I'd love to get through them all. Just quickly to recap, Charlie's on to tell his story for anyone that's just joined about his son's death, which was recorded as suicide, but all the evidence absolutely points to a cover-up. Sorry to say it, but it happened on a military barracks in the UK, and it's not the first time this has happened, and it's definitely not the first time that there's been cover-ups.
Yeah.
There are dozens and dozens and dozens of these cases out in the public domain that were absolute cover-ups. I'm going to say something here, by the way, and this is not in relation to this case, but there are cases in the UK and in a well-known army barracks that were, without a doubt, that there was murder involved in them, because not one single shred of evidence pointed to a suicide, and this was forensic evidence as well, and yet it was still recorded as like death by misadventure, which is slightly different from suicide.
Yeah.
But they don't want to go down the route that somebody pointed a gun at somebody, perhaps under the influence of alcohol or whatever, and a weapon went off. There are so many cases in the UK, I could probably bring up 20, and they're all in army barracks, and they're all deeply, deeply suspicious. Charlie's 10 years down the line, no closure, nothing. So that's why we're doing this. Last night somebody commented saying that they don't think Charlie should do this, and what's it going to achieve? Very, very negative thing to say. See if one person on this audience is able to point us, or even just the support Charlie's getting is going to help him, which is what we do here. We do positive stuff. Somebody might just say something. I'll trawl through all the comments before we close out tonight, and one person might point us in the right direction. So it's an appeal, guys.
Yeah.
So rack your brains. If you know anybody, if you've got a family member involved in law, criminal or civil, anybody that's in the medical world, dealt with deaths, dealt with suicides, dealt with coroners, hit us up, get in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, guys.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
you've had a wee breather there with me rabbiting, Charlie.
Which was good.
He needed a breather. He did say at the
Yeah.
start, I might need 5. Brilliant, take 5.
Yeah.
It's a big thing for Charlie to do this, guys, and I appreciate there's over 100 people on. This is going to go out. I'll then get this shared in other platforms, and it will go out to a few thousand people, hopefully. So we think Charlie's hitting brick walls. He's not had any help from anybody. There's some real... It's quite sad, because we served in the military, and you would think that they would treat you better. When Charlie went, we're going to get to this, right, but Charlie, talk about who never turned up.
Oh, right.
Right, this is just mind-boggling, guys, honestly.
The inquest.
The inquest.
The day of Robert's inquest.
And tell them who did turn up.
Yeah, the day of Robert's inquest was the military gave me a pamphlet, and it stated on the pamphlet what would happen, who would be there, the inquest team. They would introduce themselves to you, they would tell you what's going to happen, which is right, fine. Now remember, this is foreign to us, we've never been to anything like this. So when we turned up, the family officer, there was nobody from the Royal Air Force there, nobody. There was no officers, there was nobody in uniform from the Royal Air Force. And I said to my family officer, "Where's the Royal Air Force?" She went, "I don't know, I'll go and make a phone call." And she says to me, "Who's that man there?" And it was actually Major General D.P. Thompson, my old commanding officer. He turned up to show support for me and my family and our Guyland Southern Highlander.
So an officer for the Highlanders from Charlie's era turns up to represent Charlie and his family and be there for them. And the RAF sent nobody, not one person.
Yeah, nobody turned up. So any queries, any questions that the coroner was putting towards the Royal Air Force, there was nobody there to answer them. Any recommendations, anything he had to suggest for the Royal Air Force, there was nobody there to act upon it. And the one thing that got me with the coroner, Mr. Gardner, and he's summing up the witnesses from the Royal Air Force, this is what he quoted: "The characters of the RAF have been brought into question and they haven't been forthcoming with the truth," unquote. Now that's a nice polite way of calling them liars, and yet there was nobody there for the Royal Air Force to act upon this. Corporal Wilcox, remember the RAF police that I told you? He couldn't answer any of the questions for Mr. Gardner because he forgot his notebook. Didn't know where his notebook was. I found that very strange, that a police officer would turn up without a notebook. And I found it even stranger that the coroner didn't say to him, "Well, jump in a vehicle, go back to camp, get your notebook and you'll be questioned last." That didn't happen. It was just that, "I've not got a notebook, I can't answer any of your questions. Thanks for coming, shut the door on the way out." That was the attitude I got for that one. Unbelievable. So that was inquest. It was a diabolical. The inquest team never even turned up. And we asked why they never turned up. They said they were far too busy. Now that's your remit.
The inquest team never turned up.
They were far too busy.
And told a grieving family that's lost their 24-year-old son after 2 years' service that they were too busy to turn up. Too busy to send a single representative. I've never heard anything as diabolical. And I have heard some real horrific treatment. And I have heard some real F-ups of bodies being repatriated and being misidentified, multiple bodies in aircraft. Listen guys, it goes on. You need to remember, in the military it's a fast-paced world, especially in conflict zones, but you have to get it right with the family. The family are not military. The family are civilians. They don't understand. Even if you have to fake empathy, you've got to treat people with a little bit of courtesy. Jesus, man, honest to God.
And here's one that not a lot of people know. Sergeant Morgan, Robert's sergeant, turned up at the inquest in civilian clothes and introduced himself to me and D.P. Thompson. And he stated to me that the warrant officer, Chris Wignall, had told him nobody's to attend the inquest. And Sergeant Morgan says, "Well, I'm going anyway, I'm going to go." And he says, "Right, let me know how it goes." Now when I asked the RAF who would issue such an order that nobody was to turn up at the inquest. They got back to me and says, that would never happen. And yet, where were they? Never turned up. But Sergeant Morgan turned up in civvies. The same sergeant that, that had a lot from the family. Aye, he'd a lot to say, but he never said anything. It all came out the wash later on, as the investigation, as the ball started to roll. It was all starting to come out, what people had done. That the corporal on duty, the day of Robert's death, he was meant to be doing in the fire station. But they found Robert in his room. They phoned him and told him that they'd found Robert dead in his room. He then proceeded to phone his wife and get his wife to make the 999 call to get an ambulance to RAF Benson. Why would he involve his wife? Was he there? Was he on duty? Was he supposed to be on duty? Was he no there? So why did the other because it's a fire station, you've got a blue watch and a green watch or whatever. So why did green watch allow the corporal not to be there? Because the Sergeant Morgan, he had the day off. So it was Corporal Williams who was in charge that day. And it was him that phoned his wife and asked her to make the 999 call. Now we didn't know that for 18 months after Robert's death. When Paul Williams' wife, Samantha, phoned her mother and told her mother this information, her mother called us and then got her daughter to call us to confirm it. And I phoned Paul Williams, because I had his phone number. I phoned him and I asked him, did you tell the service inquiry this information? And he says, I can't remember. I says, what do you mean you can't remember? You've either told them or you haven't told them. It's a service inquiry, it's not something you do every day of the week. He says, I can't remember if I told them that. I says, right, fine. I then phoned the base commander and spoke to the base commander, stating that Corporal Williams can't remember if he told a true event of what happened 24 hours prior and 24 hours after Robert's death. He needs to be questioned again. Do you know what the base commander says to me? I'm looking after Robert's bench. What more do you want me to do? I donated a bench to them. And that was the answer I got off the base commander. Unbelievable. That's what I'm up against.
Jesus, man.
That's what I'm up against.
It's mind-boggling, and guys, we're only getting this 10 years and this entire event compressed into 40 or 50 minutes. Charlie's living with this. Charlie and his family are living with this without closure, without anything. He's still not allowed to view the evidence for anyone just joining. That in itself is ridiculous. If there's no wrongful death, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
What difference does it make if he gets to view the evidence?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
The statements, that they're withholding the statements.
Withholding statements, they're not allowed to know what's going on.
For the last people that saw Robert on the camp, the RAF Service Inquiry Part B is the statements, and they're refusing to give me Part B, because remember, these same people gave Thames Valley Police statements, so these statements should marry up, and I don't believe they marry up. I think there's huge changes in the statements that they gave the police to the statements that they gave the Royal Air Force. And this is where, if I get these statements and they don't marry up, then Pandora's box is going to open. And the RAF can't allow me to do that, because then it's due to retention and recruitment for the Royal Air Force. Robert was nothing to them. He was just a fireman that's now deceased, but he was everything to us. And that's why we're still fighting after 10 years to try and get to the answers, get to the bottom of what happened to him. Because it's terrible to think that serving personnel that he served with hurt him. And
take your time, mate.
good, my man, you're good.
And
It's a tough one, guys. It's hard. Even 10 years, 11 years down the line, this is raw for Charlie. And take your time, buddy.
And
you're good.
today what they done to him, and leave him behind a door.
You see, Charlie doesn't know. He doesn't know what happened. This is the worst thing. He still doesn't know, guys. This is why we need to get this story told. It's imperative that this story gets somewhere, it gets to the right people. So far, it's not got anywhere. Nothing. He's received no help, no support, nothing nothing in the aftermath. They talk about brotherhoods and, you know, the military family. And it's, even if you leave, you know, you do 5 years, 10 years, you're family for life. That's clearly not the case here. He had an old officer from his time, decades prior to his sons, that turned up to the inquest, and nobody from the RAF. Shameful, shameful behaviour from the Royal Air Force. Apparently, you know, the senior service. Bollocks. That's absolute. That's scandalous that they can't even send one person to show a family support when a 24-year-old loses his life, regardless of how he lost his life. Yeah. It's not acceptable. And this is not over. It can't be over, because the fact is, Robert died with injuries not compatible with a suicide. Those injuries were not related to suicide in any way, shape or form. After speaking to Charlie, I trawled the online looking for stuff like this to relate it and see what in a non-expert way, and it's ridiculous. It stands out that there's nothing like it. There's nothing that you could say, well, it happened there and it maybe happened there. There's nothing like it. Yep. And to cremate him 11 days after with injuries, doesn't make sense. It's not right.
Yeah, that's
it's not right at all.
That's a terrible thing.
Charlie, you're right. You're definitely right on this.
They done that to us, and then told us about the injuries, and we asked why they didn't tell us about Robert's injuries. And Dan Cartwright, there's that name again. Dan Cartwright, he said he didn't want to upset the family. How more upset could you be?
Who directed you to do this?
The Royal Air Force. They sort of rushed it through. They rushed the funeral through. And
so they selected a cremation?
No, they asked us were we going to bury or cremate Robert, and we decided that we were going to cremate Robert.
But did they arrange the funeral?
They arranged everything. They arranged it all, and it was Robert died on the 4th, and he was buried or cremated on the 15th, which is the Royal Air Force's Battle of Britain greatest day. The 15th.
So I could be wrong here, Charlie, right? I could be wrong. To my knowledge, guys, I've never heard of any regiment or any service arranging the funeral. It's up to the family to arrange the funeral, unless the family requests assistance. Which you didn't.
No, because we had to get Robert back from Oxford. We had to get him back up to Scotland. And that was all done with the coroner's officer. He actually, they'd sent somebody down to pick Robert up, and because okayed it all, and then released the body to the guys to bring Robert back to Scotland. And he told me this as if he'd done me a favour, but I'm still in shock. I'm not realising 11 days between Robert's death and him getting cremated. The investigation is still going on. His handwriting is still going on. They're supposed to be looking at things. So why was it so quick? Because they knew Robert was getting cremated. That's what I believe. They knew that we wanted Robert to be cremated, and that it was rushed through, because then you're getting rid of the evidence. You're getting rid of it.
So they made it happen. They enabled it to happen by accepting incorrect paperwork to release a body to effectively couriers that were going to transport his body north of the border with wrong paperwork.
Yeah.
A death has got a very, very specific set of, what would you say, you know, protocol and instruction. It's very, very specific, and it's the same every single time. That's how deaths are recorded, so that they're accurate, and it's a generic process. You wouldn't just go, that's the wrong paperwork, but take him anyway. Not one single bit of this sits right, guys. We don't need to be, you know, trained in law to realise this. There's none of us silly people. If it was your own sibling or your own child, you would be up in arms. It's not right, Charlie. None of this is right.
Yeah. I've been shouting for the rooftops. I went to Westminster 4 times, me and Susan, and I met the coroner's officer, Dr. Philip Lee, and he asked me what I wanted, and I said, all I want is the truth of what happened to my son on a base in Oxford. And he shook me in the horn and looked me right in the eye, and give me a handshake. Up here, my handshake is my bond. So I took it as his bond, and he says to me, Mr. Fleeton, I will do everything I can to find out what happened to your son. And I said, fine, that's all I want. That's all I'm asking you today. And then me and Susan travelled from London back up to Scotland, and by the time we got home, there was an email for the same guy telling us he could no longer help us.
Wow.
And his diary was too full to see us again. There you go. So they promise you the world and give you an atlas. There you go. Take that away.
And if I was just watching this somewhere or just reading about it, you'd be thinking, I'd like to see that proof. I'd like to see the evidence. Charlie can back every single bit of this up.
Yeah.
The fact he met that guy, and within a day, an email had followed Charlie up the road to say, by the way, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And communication ceased.
My diary's too full to see you again.
That's very, very deeply suspicious. Yeah. I would like to say something a little bit worse than that. It's downright appalling. It's, I mean, geez, oh Charlie, that's a hard one to swallow.
Aye. Dr. Lisa Cameron, she's still shouting down in Westminster for us. She still brings up Robert's case. And again, she's hitting brick walls down there. So thanks to Dr. Lisa Cameron for her help over the years. She's trying her best, but she's big boys club down there. I found it.
Guys, if anybody's got YouTube channels, share this, please. I don't often ask anybody to share anything. I don't actually even know how you do it, right? But get it shared, guys, and you know, get it liked and get it shared and get it out there. And if you think at all that you can help us, this video's Charlie telling his story, but it's also an appeal for Charlie and his family. They need answers, they need closure in this. This case needs to be opened, be it not in a criminal sense, but in a civil sense. It needs looked into again. It's not right. None of it makes any sense. It's completely bizarre. It's so bizarre that you couldn't possibly look at this case and just shelve it as that's that closed. Alarm bells ringing every single bit of from day one till today. Alarm bells ring right across the whole spectrum of the events. It's bizarre.
Dan Cartwright says it was a classic suicide, and then all this has come out. So what's classic about this, Mr. Cartwright? And Jill Wooten, it was her that told me that Robert's trauma to his anal passages is a natural event through hanging. And I thought to myself, that's not right. He didn't bungee jump. Why is she telling me this? And then I asked her if she's ever came across these injuries before in any of the deaths or suicide that she's attained. Never came across it before, never. And yet she's told me that that's a natural event through hanging. So
contradictions.
Yeah, the coroner down in Oxford was holding an inquest into a boy that hung himself. He'd actually stood on a ladder and came after the loft, and that was down in Oxford. So me and Susan decided to attend that inquest, because at the inquest they tell you all the injuries what had happened, the events leading up to it, and why they're coming to a suicide verdict. So when we got there, the coroner read out all the injuries to this boy, and there was nothing about trauma to his anal passage, nothing at all. So I got a hold of the coroner's officer.
Who's Stacey Ann, Charlie?
That's my daughter.
Right, Stacey's on. Hi Stacey, hope you're well. Stacey Ann's saying that second investigation states Robert would have had to stood in something, yet there was nothing it found at Robert's feet.
Aye.
So Stacey's talking to other people in the comments and letting them know
Right.
other bits that Charlie might have missed. When you're live, guys, you're under pressure. Charlie's never done this, so his head's scrambled, even though he's got an incredible recollection of the events, which you have, by the way. I commend you in that. You still get pressurised. Charlie is in the spotlight, and it was my suggestion to do this, and Charlie wasn't sure, but now I'm hoping that he's glad he's done it. Thanks, Stacey. There you go, Charlie. I'm just reading the comments. I'm looking for one from Bandit's commented. He's asked me to look back, so I need to find what he said.
What was I saying there anyway? I'll post my
I know, you were talking about the coroner, and you were talking about
the injuries to Robert.
The injuries, yep.
And how she's never came across it before in her career, and yet they told me that it was a natural event through hang. Sorry, yes, I remember where I was now. I was doing an inquest, and I spoke to the coroner's officer, and I says, why hasn't the coroner read out there was trauma to that boy's anal passage when it's a natural event through hanging?
I'm just going to screenshot Bandit's comments.
He said you would need to write to the coroner and ask him that question, and if you write to him, he'll write back to you. If you write to the coroner, he's under an obligation to get back to you. So I wrote the coroner a letter, told him who I was, what had happened to Robert, and why didn't that young man, I won't mention him, why didn't that young man have trauma to his anal passage? And he sent a reply to Susan, and he said to Susan, I've already told you and explained everything to you, and yet it was me that wrote to him. And he wrote back to Susan. We no answer, we still never got an answer for the coroner. So that was another brick wall that I hit. The coroner. So I've told the Royal Air Force and I've told Thames Valley Police I'm not going away. I'm not going away. I'm going to keep going till I get the answers what happened to Robert. He was worth fighting for. He was a good boy. He never brought the police to the house. He didn't do any harm to anybody. He just wanted to be somebody. He wanted to get away from being a mechanic. He was a fully qualified mechanic with Arnold Clark. He didn't like lying under motors. So he wanted to join the military. And he was going to join the Argylls. But I talked him out that because I knew they were getting disbanded. So he didn't like the Royal Navy because of the pork pie hat. So he decided he would go into the Royal Air Force. And we spoke about the Royal Air Force. First of all, he was going to become a weapons technician. Then we sat down and we spoke about it, and I said, well, look at the bigger picture. If you get into the Royal Air Force...
Do you know Stephen Kelly?
Aye, Stevie Kelly, aye.
Saying he was a great lad, yeah.
Aye. That's my best mate.
Right. Hi Stephen.
So...
Stacey's saying that you've requested a meeting with the Minister for Coroners and the Chief Coroner. Still waiting. This was done through our MP.
Aye. We're still waiting for them to get back to us.
Somebody's going to share it on Twitter, a few other people.
They blame COVID for a lot of things. Says they couldn't meet us because of COVID. They didn't want to video call us because of COVID. They'll get back to us because of COVID. So we're still waiting. But I want to thank everybody for all your comments and any help that you can give me. As I say, I've told the Royal Air Force and Thames Valley I'm not going away.
And we
find out what happened.
Everybody that comes on's got an opinion. I'm just reading a comment here. Artemis, he says, you might not like the answers you seek, take the good memories and leave the bad. I get everybody is entitled to comment. That's why we do these things.
Yeah.
Debate's healthy. The Charlie has unfortunately been left with only bad memories of the event, obviously, but the aftermath should have been one of care and compassion, empathy, the brotherhood that the military apparently instills. It seems to be completely missing here, and it doesn't just seem to be missing a little bit. It's missing in a massive scale. It's non-existent.
Yeah.
The fact that they couldn't represent Robert, who was a fully fledged serving member of the Air Force, that they couldn't even send a representative for the inquest into his death, it's up there with some of the worst things I've ever heard about the military, and that's not good enough, guys. It's almost as if they've just deliberately body swerved it, washed their hands, and created distance between the family and the service for reasons only the hierarchy of the Air Force know. As somebody, well, nothing that we're doing is suggestive. We're not going to come up with an idea that they're covering up this or that and the next thing. The evidence doesn't stack up.
No.
Just the evidence doesn't stack up. We don't need to create anything.
For day one, I've said, and then I asked the Royal Air Force, I says, I believe my son was put through some sort of initiation, and they laughed in my face and says initiations don't take place in our Royal Air Force. Well, that was proved wrong when that boy in the December, and then it came out in the papers not that long ago in the media, you saw it on the telly, the Royal Air Force Regiment, they done something with a fire extinguisher to a boy, but they videoed it, and I believe that they also videoed what they done to Robert on their phones. So somebody's got it out there somewhere, and I asked the police to check their computers, and the police told me we can't because they've not done anything wrong. I didn't say they'd done anything wrong. They were the last people to see my son. They were the last persons that they were with my son before his untimely death. So why can't they check their computers and phones? And then, lo and behold, a few days after Robert's death, Corporal Williams and his wife get rid of their mobile phones. The police told me that. Thames Valley Police told me they get rid of their phones. And I said, well, you had your chance to check them. They didn't. So why would they get rid of their phones?
Phone records exist, but that's criminality, Charlie.
Yeah.
That's.
But I'm only just a common guy with an iPhone. I'm only a common guy that's trying to do his best to find out what happened to my son.
We're all just common guys, but
Yeah.
that's why you rely on a system. That's why you rely in a death inquest, in a coroner, to exact the information and record the minutes and record the events, minute by minute, day by day, on the event and the aftermath, right up to you guys receiving the body. That should have been a very simple process. It's nothing they've not done before. The fact they're getting it all wrong suggests a complete lack of professionalism, a lack of normal human common courtesy, non-existent. Wrong paperwork here, losing evidence here, this forum missing, that forum missing. If Charlie wasn't sitting next to me, it would be like a carry-on film. If you were hearing about this, you know, in an audio thing or a story online, and somebody was telling you this, you would be sitting there saying, that can't be right. You wouldn't believe it.
Aye.
You literally wouldn't believe how badly this has been handled, guys.
Yeah, the authorities, for the coroner to Thames Valley to the Royal Air Force. It's the Royal Air Force that really get to me, because they had the answers, and they're not giving me the answers of what happened to Robert. They're no worried, they're not bothered.
Charlie, see after the funeral, when you received Robert's possessions and stuff, have you ever been contacted from anybody? Was there ever any follow-up? Was there anything?
I got
Were you offered anything? Were you
No.
offered any help, support?
they said that we would need some sort of a counselling, and they sent a counsellor. It was a marriage counsellor they sent down. I don't know why they sent a marriage counsellor, because we needed a grievance counsellor. And the woman, she apologised. She was there, a marriage counsellor.
Oh man.
As if my marriage needed it. I've got a very, very strong marriage. Strong family bond that we've got. And that was funny. But no, the Air Force, no. It's sort of once the funeral was done, and the family's officer had moved on, that was it. As soon as the inquest was done, that was it. It was switch half time. But I did receive a few messages from serving personnel. A corporal sent me an abusive email, tell me to move on, stop scratching at straws, and I took it to the papers and they published it, and he did apologise and said he was drunk. But the one that gets to me is Richard Daly, who stated that he was Robert's best pal. He was on the night out with him. I asked him a few times what happened to Robert, and he sent me an email calling me an old wank and go and fuck myself. I've actually kept it. It's in my phone, so I'll show it to Alec once I'm finished here. It's a neat thing with my phone. I couldn't believe it. And that was me. That's him who he said that he was Robert's best pal, and I knew he wasn't, because he called him Rob. Robert didn't like that. Robert was Robert or Rab.
What was the context of the email, Charlie? How did they come to those insults?
I asked him what happened, because when I heard about Paul Williams, and I heard about he stated that he beasted Robert the day before he died, and I wanted to know what form of beasting took place. And the RAF says that no form of beasting took place, but the corporal put it in his statement that he beasted Robert. So if he's saying he beasted somebody, then he has done it, whereas the hierarchy says no form of beasting took place. So I wanted to find out what form. Was it individual? Was it as a group? Did Robert mess up, and then they got the whole group to redo the task, and that's why they had a grievance with Robert. So
a beasting, guys, is military term for if one member of a troop or a platoon or a company or a battalion messes up, or he's late, or he loses a bit of kit, and a member of the DS or the training team finds it, the entire troop en masse are thrashed for 10, 15 or 45 minutes, depending on the barbarity of the corporals. It's left to the corporals, the sergeant looks the other way, the troop officer goes for a cup of tea, and the corporals thrash you until your eyes bleed.
yeah,
Or you literally, I mean, the thrashings we got in the Royal Marines were, if somebody was doing it to one of my sons, I would want to kill them. But I accepted it at the time, willfully, because you know no better.
yeah. So this is the same corporal that got his wife to make the phone call. So I got in touch with Richard Daly, because he stated that he was Robert's best pal, and I says to him to look out for that corporal. He's either a bully or he's just a bad instructor, but to look out for him. So I started to ask him what happened to Robert. You were with him on the night out, and he couldn't give me an answer. I texted him again. What happened? You were with Robert on the night out, and then he sent me a message, and that's why he started calling me all the different names and saying how could I know except that he was Robert's pal, and he done this and he done that and he looked after this, and not once in the email did he mention Robert by name. It was always him, he, him. And I found that very strange, because if it was my best mate, I'd put his name on it all the time to remember him. But I'll show Alec that message that I got for Richard Daly.
So
Quite upsetting.
I've been looking at the comments, guys, and I'm really grateful for everybody that's came on and stayed on. The numbers have been solid the whole way through, Charlie. Everybody's still on. For anyone that's came on late, Charlie is on YouTube, Charlie Fleeton, out and about. And Charlie's son was, in 2004, according to the coroner, took his own life on a British military installation, and none of the evidence points to suicide, none of the events leading up, none of the events after, none of it sounds right. Going by all the comments, everybody agrees. Almost to a man or a woman, every single person in the comments agree that this just stinks. And I know that there's a lot of honest people on this channel, and if you thought, listen, you know, these things happen and you're maybe just clutching at straws, you would tell us and you would write that. People have got the you know, we're open in this channel, we're open to that type of critique. Everybody's saying the same thing, it stinks to the high heavens.
Aye.
The way that Charlie and his family have been, well, I'm not even going to use the word represented, because they haven't been represented. They've been fobbed off with an absolute stramash of administration, just a riot. I mean, it's shambolic, it's embarrassing. I'm going to say one thing, guys. The RAF made many statements to Charlie that initiations and beastings don't happen. I worked with the RAF regiment, the Queen's Colour Squadron, and there is footage online of corporals in that regiment thrashing guys in that regiment, and they're power trippers. On a Royal Marines barracks, when you're a recruit and training at Limpston down in Devon, it's the only place in the UK Royal Marines are trained. It was a man's world when I was there. There was not one single woman on site, on camp. And corporals are God. So when you're a recruit and you go there, you see a serving Royal Marine with a green beret, which you're there trying to achieve. Those corporals are God. And when I say that, guys, I mean it. They are godlike. Because it's hard to explain, and even today, I remember seeing some of these men, Falklands veterans, stuff like that. They are godlike, extremely intimidating men, because you're an 18-year-old, you're seeing somebody with that commando beret, they've got that esteem, and it's a very, very, very daunting thing to a young guy from a village or a town or a city. And the thrashings you get are barbaric. It happens in every service right across the board, and for any service to lie and say it doesn't is an absolute crock of shit. The RAF are great at making themselves look all professional and all, you know, pictures of jets and helicopters. That's so far from what the RAF actually are and do. Right? It's not like that. You don't go up and fly a jet every day for 22 years then leave. The RAF is not like that at all. There is a lot of bullying goes on in all services. There's a lot of racism, a lot of discrimination, targeting, and all sorts of skullduggery at every level. That is a fact. Unfortunately, it appears that Robert has fallen foul of particularly nasty individuals, and it's tragic. Charlie needs answers, guys. So I'll appeal to you again. If you know somebody, a family member or someone that could shed some light and help in a legal sense with the recording of the death, anybody that's involved in that line of work, be it civil or criminal, hit us up. Get in touch, guys. We would appreciate the help. Charlie would appreciate the help. Charlie's looking for closure. It's been a long time, innit, Charlie?
Definitely, 10 years. 2011. Robert RAF Benson. I'm just going to see if I can quickly
Cheers, Jim.
find this note that I got for Richard Daly.
Guys, I'm sure you'll agree, Charlie's done really well tonight. This was off the cuff. We're up in the Cairngorm National Park area. Charlie's up doing a bit of touring. I'm kind of based up here. We've tied in, we've had the crack, and we've decided to come on and do a live on the channel. We're hoping that we can get it out there. We're hoping that we get some numbers. Ask Charlie if he served with Stevie Simpson, Cliff Whitehead, RSM or Giles.
Aye,
He
aye,
did.
Cliff. Aye, Cliff.
There you go.
I did that, aye.
So guys, Charlie's came on tonight. Massively brave thing to do. Charlie's a quiet, humble guy, right? He's a gentleman.
Sorry, I can't find that.
And
It's not
sorry,
there.
and this was a big ordeal for Charlie, reliving everything, which he probably does on a daily basis. And Charlie, you get my respect, mate. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing it and having the guts to tell your story. I can't imagine how you feel, but I've got a fair idea. I've got kids myself. Very emotional, very tragic. He's never been able to close this out. So it's as raw today as it was when it happened in 2004. God bless Robert. It's a horrible, horrible thing, guys, but it's life, and we tell stories, and this is just, you know, another way of Charlie getting his story out, and hopefully, who knows, maybe we'll achieve nothing, maybe we'll achieve something, guys. Help us if you can.
Thanks.
Anything else you want to add, Charlie?
Aye, well, as a parent, what I would really hope for is there's two options here. One, my son took his own life because he couldn't live with whatever happened. Or two, somebody hurt my boy. What would you want to believe? I would want to believe that my son's destiny was held in his own hand. But the information I'm getting and the evidence points to somebody hurt him. And that's what I live with every day. And that's why I go out and about and I take Robert with me. Everywhere I go, I take him with me as if he's there, because he loved the outdoors. So thanks everybody. I've obviously no saw the comments. I'll
It's
see
been
them.
solid, the numbers have been solid, Charlie.
And if you can help in any way, or if you know anything that happened that night at RAF Benson, this is the time to come out. You're no obliged to hide.
We don't know who's watching, and somebody could be watching, guys. And if you do know something, and you do have information, guys, you know, get in touch, man. Jeez, give this family some help. Give this family some closure.
I always say to my son, sleep well, because one day he'll rest in peace, but not today, and there's always tomorrow. So thanks very much, everybody.
Charlie, brilliant. You done well, mate.
Thanks a lot. That was a wee bit apprehensive.
Charlie done well, guys, and he did struggle with this. Shouldn't he? He had to speak to his wife, and it's a big thing, guys, to come on and tell a story. So Charlie gets my respect tenfold, and I don't give my respect easy, but big time, very, very difficult thing to do. Horrific event, still very raw, no closure. Cheers for the support, and thank you for everybody that's stayed on and commented. I know it's a time of night, people have got families, kids, but the numbers have been solid, Charlie, so it's been an interesting story. Share it. I don't know how you do that, but share it wherever you can share it, guys, and get it out there. If other YouTubers are watching, please help us out and give it a share. Really appreciate it.
We're going to your browser and just put in Robert Fleeton.
Yep.
And you'll get the story for the media and for the papers.
I'll tag stuff in the description when we finish. Thanks everybody, and I'll just quickly, Henry Cooper, total respect, Charlie, what an amazing father and husband you are, sir. Thanks, Henry. Tangerine Dreamer, I'll be sharing this. Everything, God bless Robert and his family.
Thank you.
Andrea McKinnon sends you a big hug. Bandit, top man. Lucky he loves your tours. Cheers, Bandit.
Thanks.
Donna, copy and paste to share, yep. Carol Curtis, the suicide notes, it just gets worse. I can't imagine your pain, anger and frustration. 100% Carol. Stephen Kelly, cheers Stephen, thank you for coming on, mate. Stacey Ann, love and respect to you. Frankie, Chris Glendinning, Charlie, you're a star, well done, much respect. Cheers Chris. Chris is on the channel a lot. Paul Bree, hopes you get the answers, mate. Stephen Kelly, my channel has helped Charlie and really has brought him back to life. Well, Stephen, thank you for the compliment. AC coming back to life, that's exactly what it's about. And I'm happy that anything I do inspires somebody else.
I'll see you soon, big fella.
So cheers for that as well. Lee Robertson, God love Charlie and your family. I'm going to read the comments, guys, because I don't want to be ignorant to anybody. He's stayed on for the duration. I'll just give these a quick read, Charlie. Right, we'll turn this so that we can... what did that say there? Where was it? I'm in mother's side now. Live chat. Keep up the great work on your channel, Charlie. Love the out and about.
Thank you.
Hope you get closure, Charlie. Thanks, Ian. Frankie Clark, cheers, mate. OG, cheers. Jim Smith, fighting cancer with positivity. Jim sends his regards.
Thanks, Charlie.
Frankie came in late, but he'll watch it back. Big Bobby, 555, well done, Charlie, well spoken. Lindsay, Charlie and family, I hope you get the answers you need. Absolutely heartbreaking story. Definitely, Lindsay. Horrendous story. And we've compressed the story, guys. You know, there's so much more. There'll be things Charlie's forgotten. He'll phone me in the morning and go, oh, I forgot to say this. That's just one of these things. You just have to take the bull by the horns and get out there and tell the story, you know. Well, Charlie, there's hundreds of comments from people. Everybody's saying the same thing. Dot, how you doing? Susan Young, thank you, Susan. She hopes you get the answers. Well done for doing this, she's saying to you. Positive vibes, we'll watch beginning later. Cheers, mate. J-Mac, respect, Charlie. Oh, Joy and Jolly. Everybody's quite shocked, and well, they're very shocked. And they get it. There's people on here that are obviously parents. We all understand. I know how I would be, right? Sorry, I'm moving about here. I know how I would feel quickly if it was my kid. And I know how their mum would feel. So, we need answers. Charlie's no done, by the way. I'm getting to know Charlie. He's definitely no done. Alex McPherson, cheers, big fella. Yep, Big D saying we've got a tear in their eye hearing it, tragic. Cheers, everybody, right? You can give Charlie you can go into Charlie's channel, Charlie Fleeton out and about, and leave a wee comment, send him well wishes. These things go a long way, guys, right? He'll read those comments and he'll respond, and it'll give him a boost. So thank you, everybody. We're going to go now. We're trying to get the story out. Give it a share. Thank you for coming on. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you appreciated it, because I did. So cheers, mate. Alright, guys, night night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Well done, mate.